Hey guys, today we're going to cover what the heck is going on with Iraq. I have gotten a lot of emails about this, and so it's a worthy topic of covering. Iraq it's definitely changed since I left. Last time I was in Iraq, 2013 or so. It's changing, and so they're coming up with their own sort of way of doing almost everything, and so because of that, we've got to change our approach as contractors in their country, because they are the host nation, and so they get to make the rules, and we've just got to find the best way to abide by that. So a lot of things have changed recently. I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and we're going to cover it today, so stay tuned. The first thing we want to talk about is work visas. That's right. Iraq is now requiring all Americans to have work visas. Now, when I was in Baghdad in 2011, they had just started saying, okay, OCNs, that's other country nationals, which is your Filipinos, your Indians, Sri Lankans, these kind of, the people that are being hired at far less than what we would want to do menial type jobs that don't require a high skill level. Anyone that basically wasn't American, because we were the occupying force. So Americans and Brits kind of got excluded from it, but all these foreigners from other countries, right as I was leaving in 2011, I left like 2 months before the big pullout. I said pullout. 2 months before that, like I didn't want to be there, the guy locking the gate, and leaving. Like I didn't want to be that way. So I kind of made my plan on my company. This is when I'm going out. And but there was a big emergency of, they didn't want to let any of these Filipinos, Nepalese, Indians, I mean there was thousands. And the Iraq government didn't want them to leave. And they were saying basically if we flew them out from our base and flew them down to Kuwait, that it was somehow illegal. That all of them, if they had been working here, they suddenly required work visas. And so basically we had to make this giant payment, and when I say we, I mean the taxpayers of the US. Because what happens is, as a company with a government contract doing government work, if there is an unexpected expense that comes up, and it is legally required and justified, then they can bill the government for it. So when they bill the government, where do you think the government's money comes from? That's right. So, but we ended up paying, back then it was, I think they wanted like $150 a head for 1,000 people. It wasn't a huge ordeal. We eventually paid it and just kind of said, well, that's the cost of doing business, and we wrote it off. And compared to the billions that were being spent on other shit, then it wasn't a huge deal. It was more the idea of them trying to process all those so we could get people out in the next 2 months. And as that sort of crap was hitting the fan, I left. I didn't have much to do with it, but I was very keenly aware because it was a huge issue. Well, now they are now requiring visas for everyone, and those visas are very expensive. Don't worry, your company is going to pay it and bill the government for it, so it's not something you're going to pay for. But it is a process you're going to have to go through in order to go to Iraq and work. Whereas back in the day, they just kind of flew you in. You landed in Baghdad, and if you're going to work somewhere else, you took a helo, or possibly if it was a further distance away, you might jump on a C-130, go to your base and work. Now you've actually got to go somewhere and get an Iraq work visa first. Now, as I understand it, most of the time, people are going to Erbil in northern Iraq and getting that visa done there, and then, because basically as Americans, we can walk right into Erbil. So we'll go to Erbil, get our work visas in the first 30 days or so, and then from there further deploy into the rest of Iraq, in the non-Kurdish region, and start work that way. Taxes is the next thing I want to talk about. And basically, yes, the Iraqis are now taxing foreigners that are working there. And to me, this bodes pretty badly for Afghanistan, because of course the Afghani government is just as shitty as the Iraqi one, and when they see a money grab going on somewhere, that they're probably going to join in on it, because why the hell not? Someone else is going to pay you a bunch of money, and it's a way a corrupt official can basically get a couple of houses overseas. So you now have to pay taxes when you work in Iraq. But again, this is factored into the contract. And so just like the visa expense, the taxes are going to be paid by your company. And so how that's going to work is basically when your paycheck comes, you might even see the amount of taxes that are going to the Iraqi government, but basically you personally are not going to be paying those taxes. The government's going to figure out what the tax bill is on what your pay is, and then they're going to pay the government of Iraq, and then turn around and bill that to the government of the US. And of course, in the end, you and I we foot that bill, so that it gets billed to the taxpayers basically. So thanks Iraq for that one. That was absolutely a brilliant move, and I'm so glad you did it. Okay, the last topic on a little bit lighter note, R&R policies. A lot of the companies are now paying a little bit less, definitely way less on uplift. They're wiping that out. Some are. It just depends on the company, it depends on the contract. But a lot of the bigger ones are now kind of reducing pay to work in Iraq and reducing the uplifts to work in Iraq and compensating people by giving them an extra R&R. So now instead of having the once every 6 months, you might get the once every 4 months, which is 2 times a year versus 3 times a year. So you get an extra R&R. Obviously, number-wise, as I tell people, you have to look at the numbers. I'm a numbers person by nature, but if you're trying to make sense of something, like anytime a company does something, or you look at Las Vegas and it's like, oh, look at all this free cool stuff, and like dude, they're doing that because they're making money off of it somehow. So if you're being given extra R&Rs by companies, guess what? There's somewhere that they're making more money off of it. And so usually, as far as I can tell, being a numbers contracts person, they are reducing pay and reducing other things in order to give you that free R&R. But okay, if I tell you, let's say your name is Joe Smith, and hey, I'm gonna pay you $125 to come be a plumber in Iraq. Well, if I knew that ideally you should have been getting $145, but then I go, I tell you what, I'm going to give you an extra R&R, but it's going to, I'm not going to tell you I'm paying you $20,000 less than I used to pay. Like the previous contract would have paid you more. I'm just going to say you get $125 and 3 R&Rs, and you might think that sounds good if you're like newer to contracting. Now, of course, if you were Joe's older brother and you were working on the other contract and you were making $145, you might tell Joe, like, dude, you're getting screwed. But Joe probably thinks it might be a good idea to go for that if he's not aware. So just be aware that you do get extra R&Rs, but obviously they're finding a way to pay for that so that they make a profit still. So, but at least you as a worker, you're still going to make the 6 figures, and you're going to have an extra R&R, which is a pretty cool thing. Okay, so hopefully that answers some of the questions about what's going on with Iraq. Basically, the government is seeing chances and seeing opportunities to gouge the US government and gouge contractors. And, hey, if you guys want to be here supposedly to help stabilize, corrupt officials are going to take advantage of that. And so, quick Contractor Cav story. Hopefully I can make the videos long enough. Make it really fast, but down in Basra in southern Iraq, it's very oil rich. There was a ton of oil companies working there, as well as contractors, defense contractors. There used to be a sign on the wall that said entry visa $20. When you got up to the counter, the guy said that'll be $50. When you point out, as my friend did, that sign says $20. He says, yeah, $20 to the government, $30 to me. This is what supports this local office. And that's just simple, corruption. That's how Iraq is. And that kind of encapsulates Iraq in a nutshell. And so, of course, this is just their mindset, and therefore this is what's making all these changes. So if you hear about having to pay taxes in Iraq, if you hear about having to get a work visa, this is what it's all about. Don't fear it. Your business, your company is going to pay for everything. So they're going to cover that stuff. Just worry about showing up and working, doing a good job, and making that bank and just living the contractor lifestyle, because that's what you're there for.